Isiah Pacheco from weeks 10 through 18. This is why I don't really trust him. I mean, where he goes, I think it's fine. But weeks 10 through 18, he had 126 carries. He had only 10 catches. He was good. Scored 8 touchdowns. He was the number 24 running back per game in full PPR. Now number 27 per game in full PPR, number 24 per game in half PPR. And this team does not produce good fantasy running backs. They just don't. So trust or bust Isiah Pacheco, Dave.
I'm leaning bust on Pacheco. Averaged 11.7 PPR points per game in those final 9. That is from week 10 on. That's when he was starting to play a lot more in the offense. What does that mean, playing a lot more? He played between 35 and 56% of the snaps. That's right. He was never a featured back. He only played 26 third down snaps all year, including the playoffs. He did have at least 11.1 PPR points in each of the 3 playoff games, but still was stuck in that 35% to 50. He actually hit 57% in the playoffs. So props to him. I think he'll be their lead back. I don't know if he's got to really fend off Clyde Edwards-Helaire in a major way in order to keep that job, but seems to be a touchdown reliant running back who's not going to contribute a lot in the way of catches to your fantasy team.
Jamie, let's look at where Pacheco went yesterday. He went with the last pick of round 5, 60th overall. In between, it was back-to-back-to-back. Joe Mixon, Isiah Pacheco, and Dameon Pierce. You took Mixon ahead of Pacheco and Pierce. But your thoughts, trust or bust Pacheco?
He shouldn't be going in that range with those other guys still on the board. And we had a pretty lengthy discussion on this. Scott Fish is the one that drafted him. So if you want to hear what Scott said, by the way, if you have that draft in front of you, Dave and I should grade Scott's draft. What a horrible hosting job I did yesterday, Adam. So we graded everybody's draft who was on the show. We had a lot of people on the show, and then I thought I was last for some reason, and I was like, okay, yeah, bye. And then Scott's like, yeah, I would give myself a D. But in any event, he should not go there. And so if that's where he's going, if he's going in round 5, and I think, I might have even said this, maybe prior to the NFL draft, that was a good spot for him. I think at least a round later is where he should be going. But I do think that he is going to be the lead running back for the Chiefs. I do think that he is going to hopefully take a step in some area of his production, whether it is scoring more touchdowns or being more involved in the passing game. Remember, again, look at the offseason. What did they tell us? They brought back a 31-year-old Jerick McKinnon, and they declined the option on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Does that mean that they're all in on Isiah Pacheco for the future? Well, we've noted this a few times that, running backs that are day 3 guys or, undrafted free agents like James Robinson, for example, they don't usually have a lengthy time as featured guys because they're going in that range for a reason. Now, as you can tell by Isiah Pacheco, he was one of the fastest running backs coming into the draft 2 years ago. He had probably an underrated season at Rutgers. I know Joe Pisapia, when we had him on, earlier this week, he said, or maybe it was last week, I'm sorry. But he was talking about how, he was kind of one of the guys he was targeting the draft because just, not a lot of people talking about him, and it proved to be in his rookie drafts, and it proved to be right. So we say this a lot about the Chiefs. It takes time to learn this offense. Does he fully have a grasp on it now? You would hope so. And does he have the chance to be more involved in the receiver? Well, he had a 6-catch game in the playoffs against the Bengals. So they trusted him in some capacity there to, put the ball in his hands in the passing game, and he delivered. And so I think that's the next evolution. Can he be a little bit more involved in the passing game? Does he, because the lack of consistent threats in the passing game? Obviously, Kelsey's the monster, but now you're talking about Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore. Well, they scored in the Super Bowl. It was the only catch that they had in the Super Bowl. No more Juju. Rashee Rice, we don't know what he's going to do. Marcos Valdes-Scantling, we know, disappears at times. So maybe there's just a little bit more in the hands of the running backs, and Andy Reid has certainly been creative enough to do that with his guys in the past. So I think Isiah Pacheco in the right spot is absolutely worth trusting. But if you're reaching for him and taking him ahead of Dameon Pierce and taking him in the same range as, for now, Joe Mixon, but that round 5 range, to me, that's too soon. So late round 6, early round 7, I think is, where you want to target somebody like him. And it'll be interesting to see, does he outproduce the James Connors, the DeAndre Swifts, those other guys that are going in that type of range? And I think that's where it'll come down to how much you trust Isiah Pacheco.
All right, let's talk about Aaron Jones here, Dave. Trust or bust Aaron Jones as a 3rd-round pick in a 12-team league. He was RB11 per game in full PPR last year, RB15 per game in non-PPR, and he only had 2 carries inside the 5-yard line. A.J. Dillon had 10 last year, so that's what concerns me. Plus, I just don't know. I've said this before, but it's such a great chemistry with Aaron Rodgers. That's obviously gone.
That's a worry.
Yeah.
That's a worry. And the fact that he's 28 years old is a worry. But I just love the consistency that we've gotten out of him over the past 2 seasons, 14.6, 14.5 PPR points per game annually, respectively. And last year, 14.6, while he only scored 2 rushing touchdowns. That makes me excited. He didn't play that many more snaps than A.J. Dillon, but he was more efficient across the board than A.J. Dillon. Dillon only had him beaten rushing touchdowns.
Yep. Rushing touchdowns and some other stats.
Dillon was better.
There he is. Okay.
Here I am. Where did you last hear me?
Okay.
Your thumb up on AJ Dillon.
Dillon was only better than him in rushing touchdown.
Dillon's only better in rushing touchdowns and 2 other categories that don't really matter.
Okay.
Everything else, including avoided tackle rate, Aaron Jones was better. And I think Green Bay's offense will be a little more run friendly, a little more up tempo. And you heard what I said about efficiency for running backs with running quarterbacks earlier in the show with Jonathan Taylor. Well, Jordan Love's going to be a rushing threat too. And I think that'll help Aaron Jones when he's on the field.
Trust or bust, Jamie. Round 3, Aaron Jones.
I think it's worth trusting. This is a guy that's been, tried and true and one of the better pass catchers in the league at his position, since his time in the NFL. So I can't see, even with the quarterback change, them going away from putting the ball in his hands. And again, what did they do this offseason? They made an effort to bring him back on a reduced salary because they wanted him there. They just didn't want to pay him at that same level. And clearly he wanted to be there as well. So I think as long as you're not overvaluing Aaron Jones, and I don't know if round 3 is that range because it could be, but I think, if you go receiver and this is your first running back, you should be thrilled about that.